Good morning, Dan and Amy. So the topic is Chicago violence. Obviously, the worst year in Chicago in 20 years in terms of the number of murders and shootings. 800 people murdered in Chicago in 2016, 4,300 shot. And we talk about this issue sometimes from the 30,000-foot level of statistics and not from the granular level of human life. So let's change that by having Tim King join us. Tim King is the founder of Urban Prep Academies in Chicago. They have 3 campuses, as you know, Amy. You know Tim. Inglewood, East Garfield Park, and Bronzeville, I believe. And Tim King and his students have felt the sting of violence, and recently as well, over the holiday break, actually, 2 young men were murdered that are former Urban Prep Academy students, Malik McNeese, Yuri Hardy, both murdered in December over the holiday break. I get the reports from Tim King, his emails, and something that really kind of brings it home, in addition to the deaths of these individual kids, that we're doing it right. Urban Prep Academy, been in business 10 years, 100% graduation rate for 10 years.
And what that means is every single student that graduates goes on to college.
Preparing young black men to succeed in life. That's what Urban Prep Academy is doing successfully. But listen to this. This is in the email that Tim King sent out about Yuri Hardy's death. While our students at Urban Prep represent just 1 out of 2,700 Chicagoans, they represent 1 in 190 gun violence fatality victims in 2016. So it's incredible work that Tim King and his staff are doing in pretty tough circumstances, tough as in violent circumstances. These kids, too, what they're doing in the same circumstances. Pleased to be joined by the founder of Urban Prep Academies, Tim King. Tim, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hey, happy to be here. Great to talk to you guys.
So, give us your perspective as somebody who is living this day to day while trying to provide the avenue for young black men specifically to be successful in their chosen pursuits in life.
Well, we founded Urban Prep, as you mentioned, 10 years ago we opened, and the goal was to try to make a difference, move the needle when it comes to educating young men in some of Chicago's toughest neighborhoods. And so that was our vision, and we've had some success with our 100% college acceptance rate for all of our graduates, and all of our students are African-American male, and 85% come from low-income families. So, these are tough kids. They come to us behind academically, and, our job is to get them to where they need to be, which for us is to college. So when you start out with something, with a vision like that, you're going to get some pushback from some people. But certainly it is really distressing when that pushback actually comes in the form of these kids who are trying to do the right thing getting murdered. And so it has a devastating impact, not only in terms of what it does to these families and obviously to the young men who have lost their lives, but also what it does to our entire school community and our city. Because what we're saying is that, these lives don't have value and that they don't really matter no matter what, you're going to do. If you're going to be in school, if you're going to work hard, whatever, it doesn't matter. You're still a target. You're still vulnerable. And so it can be pretty disheartening.
Well, tell us what happened to Malik and Yuri Hardy.
Well, those young men, and we refer to our students by their last name, so it's always difficult for me to make the transition from referring to Mr. McNeese as Malik and Yuri instead of Mr. Hardy, so I might flow into that. But in the case of Mr. Hardy, he was at a dance competition. And he and his dance group left the dance competition, and they were walking. This happened in the East Garfield Park neighborhood on the west side of the city. And they were headed home, and someone from the other dance troupe that they had just beaten came out of the place, started an argument, and one of them had a gun, pulled out a gun, and shot him. So it was not, it was just it was quite literally, from everything we've been told, about a guy who was mad that he had been beaten in a dance competition. And, he resorted to pulling out a gun and shooting our student, Mr. Hardy. And that happened on the 28th of December. So we were on winter break. And it was, of course, distressing for us. And as if, you just kind of feel like you just had Christmas and this happens and, oh, God, it's the worst thing possible. And then not a week later, we get another phone call that another one of our students, Mr. McNeese, was shot and killed outside his friend's grandmother's house, also on the west side. The two shootings are unrelated, but, of course, very much connected in the sense that both of these guys were students at Urban Prep, one a sophomore, the other a senior, and both robbed of their lives.
And so what do you and the families that you serve and the young men that you serve, what do you think of what you hear from the political civilian leadership of the city, the police department, with respect to the safety in these neighborhoods that you serve, these kids that you serve?
Well, I think that everyone is sincere when they say that they want the violence to stop, that something has to be done. I worry that we get to a point, or we've gotten to a point, where folks are confused or scared in the paralysis. And, what we need is action. We don't need to examine a situation and think about a problem. And so I'm encouraged whenever the mayor or the police chief, superintendent, whenever these folks actually take action, I'm encouraged, because I think action is better than no action, and something, beats nothing. But I think that there needs to be more, and there needs to be a more comprehensive approach to it. It's a complicated issue. Everyone, me, the families of our students, everyone wants a solution right away. And this isn't helped by the fact that we live in this society in which everything is automatic, and you wanna order something, click, you order it, you got it. So we want the solution to come immediately. It's not going to come immediately. It took years, 20 years for us to get to a point where we have these levels of violence. And let's hope it doesn't take 20 years for us to get away from it, but it definitely is going to take time, and it's going to take action.
Is there anything in terms of specific action in the short term, even as a stopgap for the more systemic changes that need to occur, that you think could be done? Is the police presence, for example, as substantial as you would like it in the neighborhoods where you have urban prep academies?
Yeah, I would say that where our schools are located, we have incredibly positive relationships with the police stations in our districts, in our neighborhoods. So I wouldn't say that there needs to be an increase in the police presence in our neighborhoods where our schools are located.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that there are a couple of things that we can do better, and I think there are a couple of things that we can do immediately. One, I think, is we've got to recognize that there has to be a significant and serious investment in schools, in public education. And what we have seen over the course of the last several years, and I don't think this is causation, but I do think there's a correlation here. We've seen a decrease in the investment in schools and an increase in violence. And this violence is perpetrated by and happening to, very often, young people. There was a report recently released that said 50% of young black males between the ages of 21 and 24 are both out of school and out of work. So we've got to be more serious about investing in schools instead of cutting. We hear all the time about cutting. We got to invest. I think that will have an immediate impact because you'll have more kids in school being served, being educated. We've got to figure out a way to provide some jobs. We can do that immediately. There are jobs available. How do you connect youth to the jobs that are out there? You've got people who have businesses who want to hire, and you've got guys on the street who want to work. There has to be that connection made there. That's something immediate that can occur. Community policing has never been done well in Chicago, or certainly not as well as it could be. So instead of just thinking about it in terms of let's put more police on the street, let's be real mindful that these police officers, most of them are doing their job and they're putting their lives on the line every day. They're heroes. And so let's figure out how to make sure they're connected to the heroes in the community, and they're working together to bring about the change. So those are just, a few things that, I think, and I know, this may or may not be too popular with your show or your listeners, but we got to reduce the number of guns that are out here. I mean, and that's a longer term. You asked for short-term solutions. That's a longer-term solution. But,
Chicago police are trying. I mean, over the weekend, they arrested 120 people, got 20 guns off the streets. And of those 120 that they arrested, Tim, 98 of them, 98 had previous arrests and 83 are previous convicted felons. So at least, they're trying. Yeah, right.
I think everyone is trying, and everyone's well-intentioned. It's a tough problem. It's a big problem, and we've got to move at it methodically, but continually. We have to keep going at it.
Tim, I want to ask a question. What does Urban Prep spend per pupil?
Well, that's an interesting question to ask. We spend probably anywhere from $10,000 to $12,000 per student per year.
Okay.
However, we only get about 75% of that from the district. So a large amount of money that we bring in for our operations has to come from donations and other sources.
Right. So I go to that because I just want to understand something. So you 10 to 12 grand a year. CPS spends 15 grand a year. Your kids, 85% of them come from poor households, so they qualify for free or reduced school lunch. That's the same number in CPS writ large. So what is it happening at Urban Prep Academy that isn't happening in CPS writ large, despite the fact CPS spends a quarter more per student than you do?
So we have differences that occur in different schools, and schools do things differently. So, a thing that Urban Prep does differently is it has a really strong emphasis on school culture. It has a really strong emphasis, as we've mentioned, on students being prepared for and going off to college. And as a network of charter schools, we are schools of choice. We're public schools, but we're schools of choice. So another difference is we've got students and parents who are making the decision or making the choice to attend Urban Prep. And we give them a unique experience once they're there, more rigorous experience than they might get somewhere else, longer school day. A student who goes to Urban Prep ends up within their 4-year period of time, 5 years worth of education, given, the number of hours that we're in school. So, these are some of our guys wear jacket and ties to school every day. These are some things that we do differently. But I also want to caution us not to we look at Urban Prep specifically, and, I love Urban Prep, and I think we're the greatest thing in the world. But I don't think we're the only great thing in the world. I just think we're the greatest. But there are many great things going on in Chicago.
I understand. But I get, I understand. I just wanted to raise that because, these are models. It's not the only model. It's just the greatest model, to borrow from you. But successful models that should be scaled. That's what seems was such a struggle in Chicago is we perpetuate failed models rather than scaling successful models. And there's not a singular successful model. There are many. But maybe we should pick and choose more judiciously. There's just a suggestion from my part, but I appreciate what you have done, and I think everybody appreciates what you have done and continue to do through the Urban Prep Academies. Tim King, founder of Urban Prep Academies, they're in Bronzeville, they're in East Garfield Park, they're in Inglewood. Hopefully they'll be coming to more neighborhoods and serving more young men. And also, Urban Prep Academy, as you heard from Tim King, relies in part on philanthropy, on donations. And so you should check out Urban Prep Academy. You should consider making an investment in what Tim King is doing, if I could be so bold. Tim King, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Amy. Take care.
You too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a